Hey everybody, happy Thursday. Welcome back to the Podcast Daily. We are 1 day removed from the start of the early signing period where Ohio State signed 20 players, Berm? 19 players? I don't know.
It 19 is
yeah, okay.
Seeming like it's going to end up at 19.
Either way, we realized when we were doing snap judgments on Wednesday that we talked a lot about college football shenanigans. And maybe not specifically about the guys who actually decided to join Ohio State. So we're going to do that today. It was Bill Landis' idea to shift it into a forward-looking stock watch for the guys who did pick Ohio State, Jeremy Birmingham and Austin Warp. We're just going to tag along with that idea as well because when we hear a good one, we take it.
Love it. So can I go first?
Sure.
All right. Berm said something on Monday when we were recording the daily that I quite honestly have not stopped thinking about since then, and it's that Luke Montgomery one day will be a tremendous center, and I love the idea. But he's going to start his career at tackle, and obviously you like that versatility. I think he should get his shot at tackle, but it's more his athleticism that I find myself really enamored with. And Ryan Day was asked on Wednesday about the potential for him to play early. Seems unlikely to me. He probably needs to add on, 20, 30 pounds?
He's up to 295.
Is he? Okay.
So, I mean, he's actually trying to lose. He told me he's actually trying to lose 5 before he gets here.
Me too.
So, I'd imagine you'll see him play his freshman year at about 310.
Okay, well, that's more realistic to me then, because I thought he might be more like 270, and obviously that's pretty light to play tackle at this level. Still, I think unlikely that he starts as a true freshman, and I think it's probably unfair for most players to make them start as a true freshman, and especially at that position. But I think he's a kid with a tremendous amount of upside. Clearly, is the number one player in the state of Ohio and a borderline 5-star prospect. We've talked a lot about Ohio State trying to get offensive linemen of that caliber, and they haven't done it nationally, but I don't think that should discredit doing it locally. So Luke was a major get for them.
And Ryan Day talked about the fact that he's a guy that could play all 5 positions. That's sort of been their MO. That's one of the reasons they really love Josh Fryer in the class of 2020, someone that was in that 6'5", 6'5.5" range that could do multiple things. I did say on Monday I really think Luke's professional football career will be at center. I just see too much out of him there that I think
you compared him to Jason Kelsey. I think that's why I keep thinking.
Yeah, it translates to me, and so that's where I see it. But he is going to get that shot to play tackle, and you certainly can't dismiss that Ohio State sees him that way. They get paid a lot more money than I do to prognosticate how a player will develop. So that's where they see him. That's what you should expect. But another player that Ohio State sees some way differently than others, I think at times. Is a guy like Malik Hartford, who I think that he's long, he's rangy, he's like almost 6'3", so he's a taller safety, but he's still pretty skinny. He's only like 170 pounds. I think he's that next wave of safety that you're really looking for, that guy that can come down in the box and play a linebacker type spot, but also be really nasty in coverage. And he is a big time hitter. Like that dude likes to hurt people in the nicest possible way. So I think he's a guy that didn't get talked about at all on Wednesday in the signing period. And I think that, again, because he's from Ohio, sometimes people get overlooked and shouldn't, because he is an absolute star in the making. I was fascinated. One of the things I wanted to ask Ryan Day on Wednesday, but didn't get a chance to, was how often a new assistant coach comes in and says, that's a guy I have to have, and then Ohio State jumped on it quickly. I mean, Perry Eliano almost had Malik Hartford as a commit to Cincinnati when he was with the Bearcats, and then took the job with Ohio State. And the first thing that the Buckeyes did when Eliano got to campus was offer Malik Hartford, and it turned out pretty well. So I was curious how much free ability the new coaches have to kind of make these decisions. But whatever ultimately swung the ball in the direction of Malik Hartford, it's a good sign for Ohio State because he's got a lot to go, a lot of positives building up.
I know how much everybody loves it when I say Ohio State doesn't need true freshmen to play, and that I don't generally expect that they will. So I'll just get that caveat out of the way. This is more with the long-term view of Jelani Thurman, who I think is a different kind of athlete than the rest of Ohio State's tight ends. He's got the ability, of course, I think, to go out and be a threat as a receiver. We've seen that. That's not uncommon, but he's already built, I think, pretty stoutly to maybe become a physical blocker, and that the easy punchlines about Ohio State tight ends can jump in there that, well, which one of those things is more important, which one are they actually going to do here. I think that Keenan Bailey, I really respect him, and I did Kevin Wilson as well. I just wonder if he's going to – Kate Stover's talked about the ability that Keenan had to help expand his route running ability, and we know that he's got, a knowledge about footwork and toughness. I wonder if, like, Ohio State will become more well-rounded with the way they use their tight ends moving forward, or that they sense the need to, and all this talk about Georgia and the combo they have. If Ohio State can get to that point, I think Jelani Thurman would be a key part of that. I'm projecting forward. I think he can be very good. I would say that too, that like Joe Royer can be a big part of that. That Ohio State's a lot more optimistic about his future coming off of a rough year. That people say, well, maybe Thurman could go in and do that right away. I don't think there's going to be that need for him to do that. But with 1 year of development and then a leap forward, I think he can be a very good player in the Ohio State offense.
There's probably not a position in the Ohio State program that takes a longer development path than tight end does. So for me, the question with Jelani is how patient is he willing to be, understanding that this is a kid whose dad played at Georgia. He's got a lot of athletic ability, used to being the star. How is he willing to adjust to this role where it's like you are going to need a year to learn how to do stuff? Now, that doesn't mean he shouldn't get a chance to play early because his athletic ability is different, as you said. I don't mean to continue to add context, but
you should. You know these guys better than I do.
I was going to ask because my view on the Ohio State tight end position, and it's not unique, I think people feel the same way, is that they've too often taken receivers and tried to turn them into tight ends. Bennett Christian last year was I think a different kind of tight end signee, but even Jelani, if you consider him more of a receiver who needs to develop in that way, his athleticism is like way different than anybody else they brought in who was in that mold too, right?
For Jelani, I think it's more about physical development. I mean, he is 6'6" and 235 pounds, but he needs to fill out, and he hasn't spent a lot of time really developing his body. He plays basketball, he does a lot of other stuff. He's not a weight room freak. That is going to change. If you look at guys in the past like Sam Hart and Royer and Jeremy Ruckert, like these are guys who were just split out wide as wide receivers who are big enough and big-bodied enough that you can make a tight end. This is a kid who his length is totally different than any of these other guys. If you look at his arms, like he's just a different type of specimen.
I thought Ryan Day's demeanor, countenance, whatever, changed pretty dramatically when he started talking about Lincoln Kienholz, and the competitiveness that he brings to the table, similar to a Devin Brown, where like they just don't care that Ohio State's loaded at quarterback, and I think those guys are really difficult to find. Ohio State has found or managed to find two of them in back-to-back classes. I think Kyle McCord is probably that way too. I don't want to discredit him. He kind of walked into a slightly different situation than Devin certainly committed to, and that what Lincoln is walking into now, but it's competitive nonetheless, or was competitive nonetheless. But when you add that to what you see on film from Lincoln, and like I get he's in South Dakota, whatever, it's maybe not the best level of high school football that you can find. He looks like a pretty freaking dynamic athlete to me, and I don't know, I said this on the message board like as a joke, but how many people like walking around can throw the football like that, hit a three-pointer, and hit a home run? Like, I think probably not that many. Like, that is to have like the body mechanics and the coordination to be able to do all those things, I think is quite rare. And the idea that Ohio State was able to find a quarterback with that athletic profile this late in the process, I think should be really exciting to Ohio State fans. And clearly there's going to be a extended period of time before Lincoln is competing to get on the field here. But it's also an easier notion to entertain in the world where all of a sudden they don't have the number one quarterback in the country committed in 2024. I think, with 2-3 years down the road, you can think to yourself like, yeah, I look at what's there now with him and see what's coming down the pike, and I believe that Lincoln Kienholz is plenty good enough to be the starting quarterback here someday.
It's a pretty interesting dynamic that's playing out in that quarterback room moving forward into the spring, because you're going to have, Lincoln Kienholz won't be part of that until later on, I guess, in the summer. So, but at least by next training camp, let's say, maybe the situation will be different, who knows, but you have these two really dynamic, much more dual threat style quarterbacks in Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz, and Kyle McCord is more athletic than I think he gets credit for, but he's not going to pull the ball a bunch on his own read or scramble around and make a bunch of plays that way. So I think there's going to be, I don't know if it was on purpose that those are the two that they wound up with in the last two cycles. because they may sense that they need to run the football more with the quarterback. I know that Ryan Day is going to resist that no matter which one he winds up with, because even Justin Fields wasn't turned loose to go run the football a bunch of times because of the risk of injury. So I don't know how much of that is by design or how much Kyle McCord can say throughout March and April. That's still not going to matter because my elite talent is still my arm, and that's going to power the rest of this attack.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the more overarching questions about the philosophy of quarterbacks, and Ryan Day talked a lot about what he liked about Keenholz, but it wasn't really anything about his physical game. It was about the mental stuff. And there were comparisons inside of this building last year that Devin Brown reminded some people of Joe Burrow, and maybe it's just trite, maybe it's cliche at this point, but when I asked someone when Keenholz was committing, what do you see? The answer was, I'm not saying he's Joe Burrow, but ... Like, I said this on the radio with Bo Bishop on Wednesday. If Lincoln Keenholz was from small town Ohio instead of big city South Dakota, the comparisons between him and Joe Burrow would be all over the place, because the size is the same, the haircut's the same, the way they play basketball is the same, the moxie on the field is the same. I did the story with Steve Seal, his coach at TF Riggs High School. He said, when they do scout teams, he's going up and lining up at corner just to make sure that he's competing against the best guys on his team and wants to win. So there's a lot to like about Lincoln Keenholz.
Okay. Who else is a stock that you're buying right now?
The one that I think, one of the fascinating factors about this signing class to me is how different they are comparatively to pretty much everywhere else in the country. That this is not a group of guys that were attention seekers on social media. Yeah, you had Carnell Tate, who did a lot of stuff, but nothing really since he committed. And so to be fair to the kid, he committed and stuff got locked down. There was still late conversation about wanting to go visit Tennessee to see the Alabama-Tennessee game, but who wouldn't have wanted to do that? And he actually chose not to do that because he didn't want people to get the wrong idea. But in a class full of guys that really don't talk much or weren't really attention seekers, I think you lose appreciation for guys like Noah Rogers, who I truly believe is going to be the best receiver of this group when it comes down at the end of his Ohio State career. His profile, his size, speed, his work ethic, he's thick. He's a guy that runs extremely well. He's faster than Tate. He's at the same size. I mean, it's a Mike Thomas type receiver, but he's a guy that is going to take it very seriously. Never looked anywhere else. He committed to Ohio State at the spring game when he visited here in April. Wanted to wait until June to take his official visit to make it public because he wanted his mother to be there with him and stuff like that. And there was always conversation of, North Carolina State. Every time, I don't know where that comes from. People just, when kids don't talk, what happens so often in the media is that words
fill the
put
void
into their mouths. Yeah. And it's so unfair. But I think that the worst part of that is that people don't get a chance to really love the kids up in the process and say, hey, this dude's really, really good. Noah Rogers was really, really good.
Yeah, he is. He's my. It's hard to pick a favorite because the four are really good, but he's also my favorite guy in that class.
Well, I think some of that is. I talked about it on Wednesday. Where would be the fastest? What's the easiest way? The further away you are from the football, wide receiver and cornerback, and those four guys are all very good. Probably would help if whoever's best equipped maybe to play in the slot would probably be beneficial to them. But we'll see how that transpires because Brian Hartline's not going to try and make them only learn one position when they get here. They're going to have to try and do all three. They throw a lot at them in a hurry, which is sometimes why you don't see, even with Garrett Wilson, for example, the light come on until 6-7 games into their freshman season. That's sort of by design with Brian Hartline. Didn't really happen at all with last year's true freshman class, which I think is why there's so much more urgency and intensity and hype with this next group because they know that they need it. I don't at corner. I don't know. Doesn't matter. One of those guys has to probably jump in pretty quickly. And I'm not trying to make a prediction. I don't know. It's hard to say. Their recruiting profiles are pretty similar. There's nothing that I could say it's going to be this guy or that guy, so I won't pretend to. That position though is still pretty thin. Cameron Brown is gone. Denzel Burke has struggled, and certainly he can change the conversation on New Year's Eve. Jordan Hancock can as well. But you look at what's transpired with that group, dealing with a lot of injuries and then just not having great depth in scholarship numbers. So I think it's pretty likely that Ohio State will pursue and try to sign somebody out of the transfer portal at that position. But for the long-term interest of it, somebody who has taken this opportunity and knows what's in front of them, I think is going to have to capitalize on it pretty quickly. I don't know which one.
Well, I think the good thing about that is both Calvin Simpson-Hunt and Jermaine Matthews seem like they have the mental makeup to step into that situation and probably relish it, right?
Yeah, these are not divas. I mean, These are guys that are going to come in and work, and they're not going to expect anything to be handed to them. I think in some ways, you give the edge to Matthews because he's enrolling early, and so he'll be here. He's already started working out and stuff with the team, so he's gotten a head start on getting a head start. So he's going to know what to expect. But if you just look at Calvin Simpson-Hunt as a pure athlete, he's a different level. And that's not a knock on Jermaine. He ran a sub 4.4 at Ohio State, but Calvin, with his length and he's 195 pounds, like he's a little bit different. He reminds me much more of Jeff Okudah coming out of high school than Jermaine does, which I guess is sort of the standard when you're talking about playing early at corner and actually contributing. But either one of those guys, as you said, like someone has to step up there. And now, again, because Ohio State lost Kay and Lee to Auburn on Wednesday, you do wonder if Fentrell Cypress is a guy that you look at now. And I think that Ohio State was being reluctant to dive into the transfer portal. And I talked about that earlier this week, how there were players who are saying, hey, I appreciate that. But the game has changed a little bit now, and the calculus has changed. You need another corner. So we'll see if the Buckeyes can fix that problem.
And I think, to your point on that, you referenced this on Monday. Like the person that you were talking about was Jordan Hancock.
Yeah.
And you can say now, well, here, we were going to add 3 or 4. So the numbers have changed. Like there's not a freshman coming in. We need somebody else to compete. You're not going to be able to do it alone. Like Jordan Hancock is going to have the opportunity to be the top cornerback at Ohio State. That won't have changed.
Yeah.
He'll have experience and he'll be able to do that. But, if there is uncertainty about 2 or then a 3-man rotation, you have to say, well, somebody else had to come in and compete. This is nothing against you. The numbers have changed since National Signing Day.
Yeah, they won 8, right? Isn't that what Ryan Day said in the past? Like if they can swing it, they would like 8 at that position. And I think right now they're going to lose Cameron Brown. That leaves them at 5. They're bringing in 2. So yeah, I mean, you have to have
6 wasn't enough. Like look at the problems.
Like, you have to have the appropriate number of healthy scholarship bodies at certain positions. So
I think that gets forgotten. There were a number of people that asked us about Tim Walton's first year and like that, especially on the message boards at OhioState.Rivals.com, and not all of them were just saying, "Well, Tim Walton must go." It was a question of like, what did he do in year 1? Like, why is there this opportunity he's going to have year 2? Well, because the numbers were, he inherited 6 scholarship corners. Okay. It's not what they wanted, and it's just not enough, especially if you get into August.
And 2 of them were true freshmen.
And 2 are true freshmen, and 3, your top 3 are all injured within the first week of camp. Like, why did things struggle? Like, how much fundamental work are you going to get? They couldn't practice for half the season.
was playing cornerback.
Like, that was the joke on day 1. Like, they had to get another body out there, and they used a kicker. Like, why did this happen? This is why it happened.
Yeah.
And so somebody else is going to have to fill that void, whether that's enrolling now or showing up later or somebody from the transfer portal. Like that is a position that you're right to criticize. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but it does have to be addressed for next year because the number situation is not good.
And in Tim Walton's, I guess, defense, according to a number of the recruiting agencies around the country, Jermaine Matthews and Calvin Simpson-Hunt are both top 4 corners in the nation. Like you signed 2 of the top 4. That's pretty good. Like that used to be we're celebrating around here, and now it's just not. So, I mean, you have to figure out a way to balance that, I guess.
That gets us into the other argument that existed on Wednesday. Like the per player average remains very high for this program. They
just need more of them.
They don't have 30 like some other places. So
19 is low.
Yeah,
usually they're.
That was what Ryan Day signed in his first year. It was 17 players when he took over for Urban Meyer, and no one had any idea what the program was going to do. So here we are. 4 years later, you don't expect a class that small.
Yeah, I think he said at that time, like, well, we're probably never going to do this again.
Whoops.
Oh, well. All right. Anybody else you just want to throw in there?
Very quickly, Arvell Reese, from just a pure height, weight, speed athlete perspective, I think is pretty enticing as a player positionally. Like I hope he gets a shot to play a linebacker. I think he could play the edge. He kind of reminds me of like Malik Harrison a little bit with that kind of potential. But also I just think it's really cool that there's another Glenville guy coming to Ohio State, and that the pipeline is back open because there's probably more coming down the line.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be next year. It's probably not going to be because we expect Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg to return, and those two are certainly going to be the starters at linebacker for Ohio State. But the idea of in 2024 of having a 6'4", 240-pound running a 4.5 C.J. Hicks and a 6'4", 240-pound running a 4.5 Arvell Reese at line, having two LeVar Arringtons basically playing linebacker at the same time sounds like a lot of fun to me, and I'm into it.
Is it one Malik Harrison and one LeVar Arrington?
No, I mean they're both. I mean Malik Harrison was one of the more underappreciated athletes that has come through here in the last decade.
Right.
But these guys are a different, more twitchy type of athlete. Malik didn't have that top end speed. Like he's a freak, explosive athlete, but didn't have that just sideline to sideline stuff.
I was gonna make a Baron Browning joke, but I'll just
that's one of those we don't talk about.
I'll just save that
Unmentionable
for another conversation.
If I was going to add one more player to really that I'm super excited about, it's Caden McDonald. I just think that as far as if he was an inch and a half taller, if he's 6'4", 320 pounds, he would have been committed to Georgia a year ago, and he's the exact type of player that Ohio State fans would be on message boards going, "Oh, why can't we get players like this?" I get it. He's not an inch and a half taller, so he's only 6'2" and a half at 320 pounds, playing fullback for the best team in Georgia, one of the best teams. Like, kid's a freak, like a freak. Players like Caden McDonald do not exist in the Big Ten. He is going to play as a freshman, and he is going to make a lot of problems for people. Okay. He is a very different type of defensive tackle than Ohio State's had in a while. And the first step is something that you just don't see out of young guys. He's going to make a difference.
Definitely need that if you look at what happened over the course of the year. Certainly if you're going to win national championships, it's been proven you need those guys and those big dudes having an impact in the trenches. So,
should we just say that Brandon Ennis is going to start at wide receiver next year?
Well, I was going to.
He's going to show up in June, but as you mentioned, when you're talking about whoever plays the slot is the guy that's in the spot that really has a chance to advance early. He just happens to be the one that shows up latest, but it's not going to stop him.
Yeah, well, that's why I didn't say it.
We got a lot of time to talk about these kids, though.
Yeah, we do. And we'll do that on the podcast because we're going to do that all year long. That's what we do with the Daily. Hope you enjoyed this latest episode. A lot more coming your way as we get ready for the Peach Bowl. That early signing period celebration, if you want to call it that, for Ohio State, wrapped up on Wednesday. Good to break it down, as always, with Jeremy Birmingham and Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. We'll talk to you later.